I haven't seen you, Stephen, in forever. Like it's been a decade at least, I think.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And you've
but
been,
I've been doing pretty well, health wise. We had what we went through with Eli was horrific, and it was unending. And when my brother told me one time that you will only be as happy as your unhappiest child, and Eli was trying to burn down the house and take us
oh,
all with him.
wow. Wow.
And we went
Can we
through.
just back up a bit? I just want to explain to people since we're recording. This is my friend Stephen, and he has a son named Eli whom he adopted. God, what, 16 years or 18 years ago?
Well, he's 18 years old now, yeah.
Uh-huh. Wow.
And I think he was 9 months when he came to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow. So anyway, yeah, so he's burning down your house.
Well, he was burning down. I mean, he was burning down the school. Eli was not safe at home, not safe in the
Oh,
community, not safe
wow.
at school.
What was
And
going
he
on?
was angry.
Mm,
Well, I think some kids, um, he had a lot of trauma when he was the first 9 months of his life. And
hmm
it was medical trauma and it was abandonment,
hmm
and his primary caregiver at that time came in and out of his life, and he mostly was in a hospital.
hmm
And he was, um, I mean, he had to learn how to survive in that environment as an infant
hmm
and get his needs met. And they didn't know how to meet his needs. And so he was always hungry. He never had a full belly. I mean, in the middle of a hospital, right?
Oh God.
But he couldn't keep anything down, and he had
Yeah.
had surgery, and then had another surgery, and then he went home, and he was on a in a car seat on the kitchen table, and his bio mom had three other kids that were under 5, and
Uh-huh.
just couldn't take care of him. And so he came back to the hospital before we met him, and he was failure to thrive, which means, that he was dying.
Yeah.
So anyway, somehow that rewired his nervous system, and he just couldn't be at peace with anything.
Mm.
And as he turned into an adolescent, he was so angry,
Mm.
and he was just dangerous. And
hmm
New York, we ended up in New York when it was the worst, and New York would not help us. And
What was going on?
well, he was COVID, of course. There were body bags all over the place and behind the funeral homes and everything. And Eli was out, using drugs and going crazy and coming home and staying up all night and screaming and yelling. And
Ah,
I mean, but this went on for years. So,
oh my God.
and people who haven't been through it can't understand what it's like to have a child in that kind of distress.
Yeah, I
And
can imagine.
and um, and every day and every time the shoe drops. So the the good news is that, um, when Eli met, oh, this is great. Skylar, who is his baby mama, came from Nashville to Texas. So she crossed state lines to take this child out of a child protective services placement. And
hmm
she was 18 and he was 16 at the time.
hmm
And, you know, at that point, we were just not sure. We weren't glad to have him busy somewhere else.
hmm
But she she got more than she bargained for, I think. But um, they were they were pregnant the first month they were together,
Wow.
and that's where our granddaughter came from.
Uh,
So, which is a huge blessing.
Yeah.
Kids aren't bad, kids are good, right?
Hmm.
So he stopped being angry at us around that time. Something shifted in him with the child coming, that
Ah,
it didn't it didn't stop him being angry.
right.
He just wasn't angry at us anymore.
Wow.
And we could have reasonable conversations, and we could, I mean, he refused to be parented, and we acknowledge that.
Hmm.
Um, and we said, but he couldn't live here if his life didn't look something like a semblance of ours.
Yeah.
You can't be, you can't be not going to work, not going to school, and not taking care of, your baby,
Mm.
and not doing anything, and just be here, you know, and
Mm.
stay up all night, and
Hmm.
come and go, and
Right.
crazy people. So anyway, that's when he did launch finally. And so I think he's been on his own since January or February, but it was a very long road, all that to say.
Wow.
And there's still deep trauma in us from all of that.
Oh, no doubt. It
But
sounds
we're at a
traumatic.
we're at a place where we can heal now from the
Hmm.
trauma. And his
Hmm.
brother can heal, and John can heal, and I'm healing fastest because I have less time than everyone else to heal, and I don't want to leave the planet crazy. So
Yes. Well, that's a fantastic perspective, as I would expect from you, Stephen. Stephen,
oh,
I'm getting a lot of glare. Can you shift or that's a little better? Yeah. Thank, thank you.
is that better?
That's wonderful.
Okay.
So Simon is Eli's brother, and how was Simon? How was and John is your partner? How are they? What was going on?
Well, these days, Simon is a junior in high school,
Hmm.
and we have, since the beginning of COVID, John was a professor in New York,
Hmm.
and that was Simon's first year of high school.
Oh, wow.
And so we literally had to leave New York because they wouldn't, we had been, 7 years into that trauma experience, and we had been with residential treatment centers and psychiatric hospitals and
Hmm.
on and on and on.
Hmm.
And New York said we had to do that all over again, and that we couldn't put him out of our house till he was 21.
What?
And he was, I think he was 15 or 16 at that point. So
Wow.
anyway, and Simon, had to live through all of that. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
Eli was bending John over a banister over a second story balcony, and Simon had to pull Eli off of him to give John the advantage back so John could restrain him. I mean, that kind of stuff.
Whoa.
So, yes, Simon has his own healing to do.
And he's such a
And
tender kid, or what I remember.
he
just a
is.
tender kid. Yeah.
He absolutely is. Should I move? Is this glare still getting you?
No, honey, you're fine. I mean, I don't know
Okay.
if it's going to move, but you're fine right now.
Okay. And he is just the sweetest human being.
Hmm.
He's now, 17, and he, he's just coming into his own power and his own way of seeing life and things. But everything's pretty positive with him. He's worked hard in school, and John has helped him.
Uh-huh.
And we're going on a college tour in
Wow.
about 2 weeks for him. And so everything now is back to proceeding normally for
Uh-huh.
Simon. You know, I think Eli's couch surfing in New York. So, but Simon is happy, and his resting state is happy. And so
Uh-huh.
all of that disturbance was very difficult for him.
Yeah.
But the three of us as a unit are enjoying spending a lot of time together, and and just having peaceful times.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
and this is all, taking place. So anyway, New York, we left New York to go back to Texas because we knew Child Protective Services in Texas would help us.
Hmm.
And they did. And 3 days after we got back, they said, this is untenable. You can't live like this. And they took him into their custody.
Uh-huh.
And
Wow.
so then John was working. He was still working for the university in New York because it was COVID and he could do everything online.
Hmm.
And then he switched to, I think he was working like 2 or 3 jobs. He was also working for the Austin Independent School District, which was a total mess.
Oh God.
And then he got a job at Western Kentucky University. And so we went Nashville, New York, back to Austin. Now we're in Kentucky. And things are settled down. He's got a great job and he's on his way to tenure and
Oh, fantastic.
doing great. So yeah, things have righted themselves in our life after a long time. We're grateful for that. We're grateful for the granddaughter, and and this is all happening on the stage of my cancer diagnosis, which
Right.
was, I mean, I've been in care and treatment since December 2011 for stage 4 cancer.
Right.
And I'm now alive, 10 and a half years since my diagnosis, where they told me that I had 6 months to live. And
Right.
so, we sold our house in East Austin because
Yeah.
John didn't feel like he wanted to be in a transitioning neighborhood when I was going to be gone. And
Yeah.
we made all this stuff and got ready for me to die, and then I didn't die.
Wow.
So I tell people now that I talk to that are newly diagnosed that, you have to hear what they're saying. And you have to know that it doesn't have to be your reality. But while you're making plans and getting your affairs in order, you need to keep open the contingency that you might live. Because I'm not sure I would have closed my real estate brokerage if I had known I was going to be alive
Right.
10 years later.
That's so
But,
wild. So wild.
so you make all these choices
Yeah.
because they tell you all these things, but they don't know,
Can I
and
tell you when you got that diagnosis, I was so hit by it. I don't think I ever talked to you about it, but it really knocked the wind out of me. And
it was
yeah,
quite unexpected, wasn't it?
yeah, it really was. Yeah. And you were a person for me that I just wasn't ready to let go of. Even if we weren't around, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes it's comforting to know that other people that are important to you are still on the planet, even if you're not in their sphere, right?
yes,
So,
yeah, 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 exactly.
so,
Yeah.
and I like this planet. I'm not in any hurry to get off of it. So,
Wow, that's phenomenal to me, Steve, because you have been through masterclass in, in master classes in trauma and death and grief and loss. Truly.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think maybe one of the reasons that I handle this as successfully as I do
Hmm.
is that, from my youth forward, it's always been some kind of tragedy that I've sort of felt like I've had to fight back against, starting with AIDS,
Hmm.
you know. I
Hmm.
mean, you remember the first person who the Austin community knew that died of AIDS was like in 1983. We were behind New York.
Hmm.
His name was Arthur, and he was an architect, and he lived on 6th Street with us when
Uh,
we were all living above the buildings,
uh,
and
uh,
working in the restaurants and the clubs and things
right,
like that.
right.
And it was like, all of these whispers that, what is this, this gay
Hmm.
flu,
Hmm.
and that really, I mean, that defined my life all the way up until, I mean, my partner Eddie died in 96 with AIDS.
Yeah.
But that was from the time I graduated college until,
Yes.
then. And then it was like, having to reshape your life. You came away from this battle zone,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, that was it. You were just on high alert for all this time. And
People don't understand how it was. I talked with my friend Kevin about this all the time because we were like in DC and then New York City in the 80s. And yeah, it was a war zone and people were just dropping like flies and it was horrible. And I,
and why weren't we? I mean, all that time I kept thinking, you know, I would test all the time and I would just live in
mhm,
dread for those 2 weeks
yeah,
until
two
I got the
weeks.
test back,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
And I did everything everybody else did,
Mm,
you know,
mhm.
because I was I was out and proud and playing
Right.
before we knew what it was.
Right. And I was an
And
IV drug user. That's what was
yeah,
my thing. Yeah.
so how did we not get it?
Yeah.
I don't know. And so, and I feel like I survived that. And, I got clean and sober in 1985.
Hmm.
So, I feel like I escaped alcoholism and drug addiction, and I escaped the AIDS crisis. And I've lived long enough that I managed to have this wonderful life with John and a family and,
Hmm.
all the
Hmm.
rest of that. And now cancer. So that was just another battle. But the idea that it was incurable was a little bit difficult to deal with. But how was that different from AIDS, right?
Yeah. What kind
So
of cancer is it?
it's lung cancer.
Lung cancer.
And I did smoke in the old days,
Hmm.
but I hadn't smoked for 35 years. So it was not the cause of my lung cancer. I have a genetic rearrangement in the cancer in my chromosomes that two chromosomes are smushed together.
Oh,
And this is why I'm still alive. It's because it's not from smoking or it's not from environmental. It's not from, because nothing is powerful enough to change your genetic code that already exists, right?
uh,
But now about 26% of lung cancers now are not smoking
really?
related. Yeah. And a lot of them are women,
Hmm.
young women, and they find
Hmm.
out in childbirth that they
Uh,
have lung cancer because that's the first time you get your body really looked at, right?
right, right, right. My mom had
And
esophageal cancer from smoking, and that's what took
yeah,
her out. Yeah.
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 And so these medicines that I've been using all these years were just coming to FDA approval.
Hmm.
The first one when I was diagnosed, and I took it, and I was really in bad shape, and I'd gone through some chemos and things like this because my doctor didn't think I fit the profile
Mm.
of people who were getting that kind of cancer. And man, that's what he said. I think he just hadn't researched it really well.
Mm.
I asked if he was going to do the genetic panel on me, and he said, "Well, no, because I didn't fit the profile." And I said, "But you're going to do the test." And John finally stood up and like pounded his desk and said, "You're
Wow.
going to do the test." And lo and behold, I had this genetic rearrangement that was causing my lung cancer,
Mm.
and incurable, but there were these drugs.
Hmm.
And so I went on to this drug and I was like brought back to not my former self, but pretty close.
Mm.
And I started living again,
Hmm.
and not with impunity because, the drugs themselves are hard to deal with.
Yeah.
And I've been on a series of 4 of them now over
There's
the
a lot of
last 10.5 years.
there's a lot of
And
side
so,
effects and they're
mm,
damaging to the body, right?
yeah, there's just a lot. And then at one point, the first one that I was on didn't protect the brain. So I also have lesions in my brain and treated lesions, but a lot of stereotactic radiation, which is taking its toll
No doubt.
at this point. But fortunately, I'm in a position to be a dottery old man. And and I'm 67. So,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I wear it well.
Yeah, you do.
And I was sitting in the homeowner the con when what is it called, the homeowners association meeting last night,
Oh,
because
God bless.
they brought me in, and my neighbor, who is the dean of the university,
Mm.
and John's boss's boss, right?
Oh, dang.
But she's our neighbor, and we're close friends, and she's on the board, and so she recruited the African American man and the gay man to be on the board. She said, "Now my work is done." But
Diversity.
yeah, so and we're in Kentucky, remember?
Oh, yeah. So, wow.
So anyway, I was at the board meeting last night, and they asked what my address was. I couldn't tell them.
Oh,
Just couldn't tell them. So,
yeah. Yeah.
and
That
I got my phone
happens.
out and I looked at it and I said, "This is what my address is."
Wow.
And I thought maybe they don't want me on the board, you know.
Yeah.
But so
But
I'm on the violations committee. I have to drive around the neighborhood every few days and check for boats parked in the driveways.
uh-huh, uh-huh. That's so funny. What is it that my father gravitates to being on boards of HOAs and stuff, and it looks so unpleasant to me. Like there's nothing appealing about it.
Well, this one seems more insulated from direct resident contact.
Mhm,
In this, I mean, everything is done, over computers and letters and things like that. So,
mhm, mhm.
and we'll see. And they're kind of fun.
Oh,
And
good.
I do have time. I volunteer for CASA. This was something perfect for me because I have been through so much with the juvenile justice system and with the child protective services and things in my own world,
Mhm.
that I felt like I could be of service to foster kids who are in the state custody. And so CASA is court appointed special advocate.
Ah,
And so that's my big volunteer gig now. And I
cool.
am working. Well, I honestly think I can help. So,
Yeah, of course you can.
oh, and then you know what else I do? I bake lasagna. Have you ever heard of Lasagna Love?
No,
Mm,
what is
it's
it?
a well, it's a national organization.
Mhm.
And I mean, this is a little fluffy for me, but it's a national organization that tries to promote community connections.
Mhm,
And so they have this website,
mhm.
and people who need to, I mean, it doesn't help you in your food shortage problem, but if you go on and you request, somebody like me will bake a lasagna and bring you lasagna and salad and crusty bread, and you can have
Wow.
a big meal with your family. So sometimes it's people who don't have enough food, sometimes it's people who are going through cancer, or sometimes,
Mhm,
you
mhm.
don't have to justify yourself.
Right. That's
And
fantastic.
it's kind of, yeah, it's a weird gig because some people don't really know. I mean, you can't expect a thank you always,
No,
you know. They
right.
don't really know, how it works and where it's coming from. They just know
Mhm.
this
Guy's
old
person
man
shows
and
up
this old man in a BMW shows up with a pan of
with a
lasagna.
lasagna. That's so surreal. I love it.
It's kind of interesting. So those are my gigs, my
Uh,
HOA and my CASA and my lasagna.
nice.
But that's enough
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine.
because I love to wander. We live on a ridge here in Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to wander the property.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a forest right up to the back of our house.
Oh,
The
wow.
front looks like a typical suburban neighborhood, and the back is the
That's
forest.
wild.
It's a
Nice.
mullet house. It's business in the front and party in the
Party in
back.
the back.
And then it's a 70-foot drop off down to a river.
Oh, wow. Oh, John. Oh, Steve, I called you your
And so
husband's name.
uh, it's okay. And so there's a lot of time I spend wandering and meditating. And
That
so
sounds so lovely. I find
I
that the
know.
older I get, the more I need a natural setting. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I just do. I just think of you as somebody who has had an interesting intersection of really bad, heinous situations happening, but also random, like fantastic luck, like when you and John won that house from that crazy reality show. They won a
Yeah,
house, $1 million house from a crazy reality show that never aired. Yeah, and things
it
like
was.
that. Like fantastic people, and you've had really great luck in a lot of ways, and yet these things happen at you, or
I know.
yeah.
You know, this cancer organization flew us to San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
and gave us a just this amazing week in San Francisco when the kids were younger
Mm.
and we weren't sure how I was going to do. And we went to the basketball in Oakland and
Uh-huh.
sat in a box seat, and
Wow.
we went all. It
They
was
gave
so
you
much
a
fun.
week?
Yeah, it was so
Dang.
much fun. I know. And somebody just called and said, "Would you do this?" And I said, "Yes, we're
Right.
available." But we have had tremendous luck,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that comes from living openly and just, having, always showing your hands and not hiding anything. And
Mm. Mm.
I don't know what it is, but there's a lot in my life to be grateful for.
Well, I remember you telling me about Eddie's death, and how transformative that was for you. That he really died in the way that one admired and aspired to.
Well, you remember when people were dying so young, these were young men.
Yeah.
And I remember well, how old am I? 67. So I was 57 or 56 when I was diagnosed with this cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like my initial response wasn't as positive as it was, because I had these young kids and I had John and I had
Mm-hmm.
this, we were doing well in our careers, and I just thought, well, this isn't the way this is supposed to be. And
Mm.
I would think about, not being here for all of the things that were going to happen. So at 56 or 57, I felt like I was being cheated,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
I had to work on that because, I had to get back in touch with the randomness of the universe and people dying all the time. I mean, we're
Yeah.
on this rock hurtling through space, and
Right. Right.
how did it even happen anyway? So people that were dying of AIDS were angry.
Yeah.
They were angry for a lot of reasons. They were angry because they'd been told they were abominations their young life.
Yeah.
And, people had been so cruel. And somehow we managed to forge positive existences out of that kind of growing up, always hiding who you were and always being ashamed.
Mm.
And not everybody could get past that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's this disease that's killing everybody,
Mm-hmm.
killing us young. And I mean, talented young people. And so Eddie was an example of sort of a person who was able to not be angry. I mean, I think he was hugely disappointed. He
Yeah.
didn't want to die. He didn't want to
Right.
leave.
Right.
But somehow inside of him, he intuitively knew that he needed to relax into what was happening and to try and live in the moment and do the best he could.
Wow.
And he was just a loving being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was a little rougher around the edges than that. And so, yeah, being his partner and going through his illness and his death with him was, one of the things that allowed me to transcend to a new way of living.
Mm.
It was like this gift I was given because I was willing to stay there and show up and be there for him.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It softened me. And
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. And it's given you the gift of being able to be present, I think, in the
Yeah.
now. And I always have admired your ability to stay pretty calm in a pretty hairy storms. I mean, you're certainly human, but
My hair
it's,
was on fire a few years with Eli.
it's Steve, it sounds insane. I mean, I just think of the way that what my parents had to go through with me and my anger and my rage, and to amp that up, it's just how do you even tolerate it? It
Yeah.
just sounds horrible and heartbreaking and rage making and
Well,
yeah.
and I think Eli also had this sense of loss for his biological family, this
Mm,
huge, you know,
grief.
it's almost like his genes had, stored this generational trauma and this,
Yeah.
and maybe he needed to work, he left a situation. It was a primal wound to lose his
Mm-hmm.
mother.
Mm-hmm.
And, many adopted kids don't get past that wound
Mm-hmm.
and don't get past the idea that they were given away, you
Right.
know,
Right.
and that their aunts and their uncles and their siblings and their cousins and this whole family they lose, right? And I don't think it's something that we've dealt with in the adoption world in this
Mm,
country. What it means to adopt transracially, what it means to adopt, period.
mm-hmm.
I mean, in many cases, it's the best solution. I
Yeah.
work, I work here in Kentucky with CASA,
Right.
and I see unbelievable things,
Yeah.
that are that are just child abuse, and the drug addiction and the alcoholism and just the child abuse and the sexual abuse and things like that. And you can't leave kids in those situations,
Yeah.
but removing them from their biological world
Mm-hmm.
has repercussions that a lot of them just don't get over. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think especially with a Black child, there is a intergenerational trauma that we can't even comprehend or imagine.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, this is a very disjointed conversation when you talk to me. But after Eddie passed away,
Mm,
then I did I did a lot of work in GLBT civil rights, and I uh, I was on the board of governors of the Human Rights Campaign, and I produced dinners in Austin for HRC, and
mm-hmm.
I worked on the marches and things like that, and
Yeah.
you know I could have done more, and I could have kept doing what I did, but I did a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I, I felt like, and I was acknowledged for the work that I did, and that was wonderful. But I kind of had to move away from it after, like when Eddie died, I had to move away from the AIDS world,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then that sort of completed my mission that way. I felt like that I had done a lot to try and see that kids growing up had it better than I did.
Right.
Gay kids growing up had it
Right.
better.
I can barely do LGBTQ work. I try to stay out of that unless I'm asked to do something. You know, I'm drained.
Yeah. Well, so and around that time, I finished a lot of work with a therapist, and then about 3 months later, John and I met,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like, I mean, I feel like I've had chapters, chapters and chapters that close too,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
and then move on to the next chapter, and sometimes, and it references everything from before in the book, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm. It's
definitely a
done.
new chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It was very strange. There were a lot of people that didn't like it, that, that I was moving away from everything
Mhm.
and moving into that relationship
Right.
and looking ahead for something completely disconnected
Yeah.
in a way. And I
Yeah.
think that's why our leaving Austin was inevitable, but
Mm.
um,
People were
it was
that
time.
chapped by it, huh?
Yeah, it was
Wow.
time.
Yeah, I felt that way.
I'm not sure I just want to be there. We're in Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
and they're as conservative here as anywhere in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But whereas in Texas, I felt like I was constantly harangued and unsafe in
Mm-hmm.
some kinds of situations. And
Mm-hmm.
even in Austin,
Yeah.
you hear this bombardment coming out of the Capitol, day
Yeah.
after day, week after week.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
mouthy about how good they are and about how shitty everyone else is. And, I
Yeah.
was tired of about what people think about me
Mm.
and my life. And we came to Kentucky and we didn't know what to expect, but we can watch a whole evening news show
Mm-hmm.
that in Kentucky, and nobody says anything about the culture wars.
Uh-huh.
Now they don't have to because there's 60% of the people here.
Ah.
So it's not a matter of who's going to win what elections. We don't have to
Mm-hmm.
do all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I've moved away from the front lines of the culture wars.
Mm.
People in Georgia, people in Texas, people in Arizona,
Yeah.
people in California, people. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
they're on the front
hearing
line.
they're on the front lines,
Yeah. I'm
and
in
if
North Carolina, so I feel
yeah,
similarly. Yeah.
it's the same. Yeah, but you're in a pretty liberal area of North Carolina.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's a lovely state. It's a little less insane than our representatives would have you believe.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it's actually a swing state, I think, isn't
Mm-hmm.
it?
Mm-hmm.
So, so I feel much more peaceful here,
Mm-hmm.
and I have no control over what they're doing,
Right.
and
Right.
literally because they're 60%, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
so I feel like that there's not much more that I can do. I write checks,
Mm-hmm.
and but I don't go to marches anymore, and I
Yeah.
don't. I'm old, and the young people, if this world is going to be saved from itself,
Yeah.
it's not going to be the
By the
70-year-olds that do
70,
it.
right. My
I mean, it's
therapist
the
said,
70-year-olds that are ruining it in Washington, but
right. That's another story. Yeah, my therapist said, you can put down the sword. You're 60. Like you can just put down the shield and the sword and just
yeah,
relax. Let the kids do it. And I'm
because
fully,
if they don't, it's not going to get done. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And it's, yeah, we did our part. But here's what I want to get at with you, Stephen, because the concept of this podcast is that it's for people who've been through hell and have survived and have even thrived or have arrived at a place where they feel somewhat serene. Because my struggle is I go through bad stuff and I want to die. So I'm always looking for the why live, and so what keeps you going? What is it that keeps you going? What gives you happiness and joy? I know your grandkid does, and
Yeah.
John does.
And Simon and John.
And
Yeah.
Simon and John, yeah.
And I mean, we dropped out of the A-gay world a long time ago.
Uh,
We don't do black tie dinners, and we don't travel, and we don't do, I mean,
you did all
and
that, yeah.
I had to shut down my business before I was in my 50s still.
Mm,
So, we're comfortable, but
mm,
we don't have the cash flow we used to have.
yeah.
I think that I have always been fascinated by this planet and the whole idea that we're hurling through space, spinning, and how improbable it is that all this exists.
Mm-hmm,
And the real chance that this is all that my consciousness will ever experience.
mm,
You know, I mean, it's fun to think about reincarnation, all
mm-hmm.
that. But nobody knows until they pass over, right?
Yep.
And if you are, I mean, I don't expect that there's going to be Jesus and the, I mean, I just don't. For me, it's so obviously mythology
Mm-hmm.
designed to control the masses
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not disturbed by whether or not I'm going to be judged or, honey, I've been judged.
Right. Yes.
And I've come
Amen.
through that. And I
Yeah.
live a decent life where I help people,
Mm-hmm.
and what else can I do? What else can I contribute to humanity? And I try to evolve myself
Mm-hmm.
because I believe that the planet evolves one person at a time,
Yes.
even though it probably happens quicker if you're in community.
Yeah.
But I just have always wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious. There was a point when things were going on with Eli where my brain toyed with the idea that I could just die and get out of all this shit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's never been a serious consideration for me, even when it's the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Even, I think it would, if it was going to happen to me, it would have happened to me when I was younger and before I escaped to college,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if something really horrible had happened and I had been outed and everyone was
Yeah.
shaming me and everything like that, but if if I was suffering from that, maybe that would have given me the inclination, but
Yeah.
no,
Mm-hmm.
I love being alive, and I have this idea of how precious these moments are.
Uh-huh. That's
And
amazing.
so, and I always know, or I always have hope that it will get better. And it does. I mean, now I have empirical evidence at this point in my life
Right.
that that things don't stay rotten, and that my attitude about what's happening to me dictates what kind of experience I'm going to have.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like John and I. We tell each other, well, if the stock market crashes and we have to,
Live
we
in a
can we
tent.
can we can decorate a shack fabulously.
Right.
We'll make it work.
You've been through
And
the worst. You've gotten a death sentence, right? Like you've been through the ultimate.
several times, right?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so I
Right.
really think that alcoholism and drug addiction and the AIDS crisis and the cancer. I mean, what else are you going to do to me? You know,
Right.
and I'm still here, motherfuckers.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
You know,
And
and
happy to be here.
I'm enjoying my granddaughter. I'm seeing
Mhm.
my son Simon graduate. I'm seeing my son Eli spin off. But I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, I feel like after all of that time and everything that we went through, he's not angry at us anymore.
Yeah. That's a real
And
shift.
it's a real shift.
Yeah.
And so we have a bond,
Mhm.
that also we came through his mental health and all of that together. And
Mhm.
he's never going to be a conventional human being. And that's none of my business now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I raised him the best I could. And God knows, I mean, nobody could have done more for that kid than we did.
Right.
And you would be surprised at how many people, how many families, how many children there are out there that have these serious mental health issues
Mm.
and that create untold havoc in families' lives. I mean, it's not thousands, it's hundreds of thousands.
Wow.
I mean, you got to be brave to come to Kentucky. And not because it's so bad once you're here, just because you don't know what you're going to find.
Mm.
But there's not a lot. It's beautiful here.
Yeah.
Unbelievably beautiful.
It
I
looks
mean, this
beautiful.
is, and the real estate
Mm-hmm.
is so inexpensive. That's changing, but we got here and we would have been living in a little place. We went back to Austin. We couldn't afford our neighborhoods, right?
Did you see,
Pardon me.
Steve, in the New York Times, they showed a 2 bedroom, 1 bath bungalow in Austin going for $1 million.
Yeah,
Two
yeah.
bedroom, one bath. That's what I live in. I won't even tell you what we paid for this because it wasn't a
So
million.
yeah, we came, we came back from New York and we looked
Mm-hmm.
around, and so we were building a house,
Mm-hmm.
and we got literally it's in Austin, but
Mm-hmm.
it's on Wells Branch Parkway. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the northernmost part. The next block was Pflugerville,
Oh, okay.
and it was going to be a nice house, and we got a good price on it. But the year after we did that, we decided to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And the builder, normally if you cancel your build,
Yeah.
they keep all of your deposits and
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
upgrade money and everything. I said, I said, you probably would like to have my house right now, wouldn't you? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you can sell it for a lot more than what you sold it to us for.
Mm.
And you can give me my deposits and my upgrade money back, and I won't wait around and sell it. I'm just leaving. And he said, done.
Nice.
Because it had gone up 10%
Mm-hmm.
in the time that it was being built. So anyway, but we came to Kentucky. We live in this 3,500 square foot brand new house on a ridge.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
Wow.
And it's not pretentious.
Uh-huh.
It's not with soaring ceilings and all that.
Yeah.
And it was $380,000.
Wow. That's so cheap.
I know. We have a nice place to be. If we don't go out very much, at least we enjoy being at home.
That's fantastic.
So I
Yeah.
know this is not what your podcast is about, but this is how my brain works now.
We're just chatting.
Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah.
So, and so the answer to your question is that I know that if I wait, if something is uncomfortable for me, if I wait
Mm-hmm.
and I'm patient, then it will shift.
Mm-hmm.
Even the most heinous of things, even the unimaginable, and breathing in and out and moments of life are precious.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're suffering, which isn't necessarily, I mean, physical suffering is different, but even if you're suffering, it's probably not necessary, but that's how we are.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you're suffering, the suffering will end
Mm-hmm.
and you will find a place of light again.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always known that inside me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm sitting here at peace right now and just not, and I'm trying to keep up, but I am, Mike McKinley says, at my advanced state of decline. Really, you know, I feel my body getting older and I feel the cancer drugs taking their effect and I feel all
Really?
that. I mean, I can still go out and walk the trail and walk up a hill. And
Oh, wow. That's
so,
awesome.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my mobility for the time being is, I mean, well, I have to be really careful on stairs
Mm-hmm.
because that balance issues and things. But
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just adapting to all of that.
Right. Your body's changing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's okay
Mm-hmm.
because hell, I thought I was going to be dead 10 years ago.
Right. Right.
But
Well,
I
wow.
had so much fun back in our days together, didn't we?
Yeah, we had a good time. So crazy. I want to thank you for spending so much time with me this morning. I really
Well,
appreciate
we could talk.
it. We could and we should.
We should, right?
Yeah, we should. Yeah,
We have
this
we have
could be
more
a,
fat to chew.
yeah, we do. We sure do. This could be a reignition.
Hmm. I
Yeah,
would like that.
I would too. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're doing what you need to do. You're still here, which is phenomenal.
I'm still here, bitches. Still here.